My name is Kelly Johnson, and I hold the Faree Chair of Social Justice here at UD. It's my privilege tonight to welcome you to this evening of honoring and learning from Brother Ray Fitz, which is also the opening event for the Common Good in a Divided City conference. This conference, which will be continuing all day tomorrow and into Sunday afternoon, and for which you can still register if you didn't yet, grew out of a conversation among a few of us about the singular importance of Brother Ray's contributions to thinking about and working for the common good. In Catholic thought, the common good refers to that truly good life that we can only have by building it and enjoying it together in common. That's a big and beautiful claim. We are made to thrive together. It's also very abstract. For decades, Brother Ray has been pressing us to ground our thinking about the common good in the particularities of our place. In this region, as in many others, our geography sets us up to compete for the good life, not to share in it. Regardless of our intentions or our ideas, we live in spaces that divide us. So Brother Ray asks, how can the church, which is itself so divided and yet one body in Christ, be a catalyst and a partner in promoting the regional common good here and now? So it's only right that this evening we hear from Brother Ray as we begin this conference that is dedicated to building relationships to respond to that challenge that he has issued. But before we allow Brother Ray to take the floor, the university will recognize his dedicated work by awarding him its highest honor, an honorary doctorate. So we'll begin the evening now with an opening prayer offered by Brother Ray's longtime collaborator in promoting the common good in this region, Reverend Vanessa Ward. Reverend Ward.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we begin this prayer invoking your presence and spirit in this place. We gather to give thanks for the person and work of Brother Ray Fitz, one who has touched each of us in a special way. For a champion of peace that consistently models love, respect, and appreciation for all humanity, regardless of race, zip code of residence, color, or creed, who calls us all to speak to truth to power for those who have no place at the table, bargaining for better schools, safer neighborhoods, intentional collaborations of those sharing the commitment of raising families to places of honor and respect. We give thanks. A servant leader who brings to light the challenges of equity and inclusion that have for too long plagued our neighborhoods and communities, leading students, civic leaders, and politicians to advocate for changes to make children and families whole. We give thanks for the relentless vision that Brother Ray has embraced, seeing us all working in our good, yet weaving together the threads that enlarge a tapestry of hope for the common good of God's creation. We thank you, Lord. We have seen your heart, heard your consistent voice sounding a clarion message through our beloved friend and colleague, Brother Ray Fitz. We come tonight prepared to honor him and the work that he has modeled so courageously before us. To your glory, O God, we pray. Amen.
Good evening. My name is Mary Busalis, and I am the current chair of the University of Dayton Board of Trustees. The University of Dayton recognizes and honors individuals of extraordinary achievement, distinguished service, and exemplary character by awarding honorary degrees. The university uses such occasions to make a public statement about its mission, aspirations, and institutional values. Having worked with you, Brother Ray, in our community over the years, it gives me great joy at a personal level to see this man receive the honor he so richly deserves. I am now pleased to introduce Provost Paul Benson to begin the conferral of the honorary degree.
Thanks very much, Mary. As the university's provost, I'm pleased to add my welcome to all of you tonight. The opening of the Conference on the Common Good in the Divided City is a particularly meaningful moment at which to confer this honorary doctorate on Brother Ray Fitz. For we recognize in this special way this evening the breadth and depth of Brother Ray's influence on the ways in which the University of Dayton strives to partner in community building in our city and engage the claims of Catholic social teaching upon our mission to connect learning and scholarship with leadership and service. At this time, I invite President Eric Spina, Dean Jason Pierce, and Brother Ray Fitz to rise for the conferral of the degree.
Honorable President, it gives me great pleasure to recommend Brother Raymond Fitz, SM, for the degree of Doctor of Humanities, honoris causa, and to recommend him as worthy of being awarded the degree for which he has been approved.
Thank you, Dean Pierce. Servant leader, catalyst, bridge builder, architect, visionary, beloved friend. Humble and selfless, you model what it means to be a leader who serves. Engaging the Catholic intellectual tradition and using Catholic social teaching as an ethical compass, you work tirelessly to be a catalyst for the common good, building bridges at the University of Dayton and in a fractured city and world. In characteristic Marianist fashion, you bring people to the table in a spirit of collaboration and solidarity and truly value their gifts. In the Dayton region and in the classroom, you facilitate participation, collaboration, and learning in confronting poverty and racial injustice. You see the face of God in the marginalized, the forgotten, and especially our community's children and families. During your remarkable 23-year presidency, the longest tenure in university history, you moved your alma mater from regional recognition to national prominence through your twin abilities to think boldly and empower others to reach high. With patience and persistence, you became the architect of the modern University of Dayton by laying the foundation for the realization of our dreams and aspirations. Big ideas, such as creating an unparalleled learning living environment through the purchase of hundreds of single-family homes for student housing, became reality. Storied accomplishments, such as working with the faculty to redesign the undergraduate curriculum by integrating the humanities with professional education, became the underpinning for today's common academic program. Trusted partnerships, such as the Genesis project that led to the extraordinary development of the Fairgrounds neighborhood and Brown Street, solidified the university's reputation as an anchor institution. On the national stage, you served as a U.S. consultant during the development of Ex Corde Ecclesiae, Pope John Paul II's apostolic constitution designed to strengthen the religious identity of Catholic colleges and universities. In the 2 decades since stepping down as president and returning to the classroom, you have continued to challenge students to use their Marianist education and faith to build community, work for justice, and serve others, always with a compassionate heart and a critical mind. You sow the seeds for our graduates to live faith-filled lives of great purpose. Through your leadership in community initiatives, such as the Commission for Minority Inclusion and Bridges Out of Poverty, you've inspired us to value the dignity and sacredness of all people. For your prophetic leadership and humanitarian's heart, and for putting Catholic social teaching into action on a large scale, the University of Dayton honors you with its highest distinction. By approval of the Board of Trustees, I hereby confer upon you, our beloved friend, the degree of Doctor of Humanities honoris causa, with all the rights, responsibilities, and privileges pertaining thereto.
Well, I have to say I'm very overwhelmed with gratitude for this outstanding award. I want to thank Eric and the university community for making this happen. Now, when I heard that Eric wanted to see me, I had this fear of going to the principal's office. Okay? It happened a few times when I was a rambunctious adolescent. Okay, so. But he said he's going to come to my office, so I knew I was okay. When he comes to my office, I'm in good shape, okay? So he talked about this honorary degree, and he knew I had an instinct to say no. But my thought was, maybe this is an opportunity to say what's going on in our community and really highlight some of the great things that are happening that I've been able, as privileged, to participate in, but to have so wonderful people to work with. So I had a dilemma. I wrote a paper, which is on the website. I will work from some notes because I'll be able to make some ad lib comments that way. You know, every once in a while something sneaks into my mind about I should be saying in this situation. So, you know, we're celebrating it 20 years after I was president, and I had to think about what was a good way to talk about me as a person in the community. I came up with this phrase, a friendly community nag, okay? So what I mean by that, I was a person that I think does pretty well, among other people, to convene people, to facilitate conversations, and of course I like to write down the conclusions of those conversations so that we can provide opportunities for our children, our parents, and our families. It's something I've been very passionate about. So what I would like to do tonight is, first of all, recognize some friends that have been part of that whole process. I think it's really important to do that because while you might say this is a recognition of Ray Fitz, it's a recognition of all the people that have been in that network that have been working together. So I do want to recognize. I want to talk a little bit about regional solidarity, what I mean by that concept, which I'll do a little discussion of. Pardon me, the divided city and the hidden violence of poverty, and talk a little bit about our two-generation approach here in Dayton, and finish with 3 challenges. So now, tonight, you might see a little bit different Ray Fitz than you're used to seeing in public forum, okay? Because I'm going to share with you some of the deeper motivations that are part of my life. Clearly, my Christian faith background being a Marianist is extremely important, and it's really the reason that I do what I do. Seeing Jesus Christ in the poor really is what motivates me. And I have to say, in my prayer life and the ways I work together on those, that this issue has really been strong for me. I'm also delighted to be part of the Marianist family of religious communities and lay communities that work in the spirit of Mary, of bringing Christ to the world, to really bring about a transformation in this world of ours. So tonight I'll try to outline some good things. I also want to just raise up the thought of my own Marianist community over in Stone Mill that have been so supportive and working with me. And I'm very delighted to have some of my family here tonight, and especially living with them, working with them, really has made a difference in my life. So I want to talk a little bit about friends that are passionate about social justice. Dan Kern and Eric Spina have been very supportive as I've left the presidency to allow me to really continue to work in the community. And I've been very respectful that they're the president and I'm not. So that's always kept a good relationship. And I was glad to be the not. So to them, I think I really do want to give gratitude to let me continue to do the work. I want to recognize Dick Ferguson. Dick and I worked together. Dick was our assistant to the president for community relations, and we did the Child Protection Task Force together. And one night we were sitting in the office trying to put the recommendations together, and both of us looked at each other and said, we need to get our students involved in these kind of things. And we put together the Leadership in Building Community class, which has been taught for 27 years. And it's really, I think, led to the creation of the Center for Leadership and Community. A lot of interactions, and I can't tell you how proud I am of the many students that have gone through that program. I want to recognize two people that I think have been just so important in this community. One is Mike Parks, who is the chairman of the Dayton Foundation, and the other is Tom Lasley, who has been a real strong emphasis on bringing forth the quality of our educational process, but helping us bring together this two-generation approach to working to support families and children. Those two have been really instrumental in making the good things happen here in Dayton. And they've hired good staff. I really enjoyed working, particularly with Nina Carter and Amy Jomantis. They've really been just really helpful to work with. Now, I can't tell you the first time I met Reverend Darrell Ward, but I knew that he had a really innovative program in urban ministry at Union Theological. So I said I had to meet him. And we did, and he came on the board of trustees, and I think really made a difference in how we did things. But of course, you meet Darrell, you meet Vanessa, and you meet the whole family. I mean, you can't believe how dynamic this family is and what good things they bring. So, particularly to Darrell and Vanessa, I really appreciate the friendship that we've had. It's really been life-giving to me. In the early 70s, you might remember that there was a little bit of turmoil on campuses. I mean, some of you can't remember back then, but there was, let me tell you. And at that time, I had an opportunity to work with some students that want to make a difference. And that's when I met Frank Sirico and Jan Lepore Jenelson. We had this thing called Project Interface, where the students were talking to the business community, trying to get some thoughts about what was the important way to do things. And I have to tell you, that friendship has lasted 50 years. And they are now, Jan is the head of the East End Community Services, and Frank has been on every community service board there is, and he's really made a difference. And if you ask Frank a question, he has an answer. And I enjoy, that's been great. I also think I want to recognize all the people in our Center for Leadership and Community, and I do think that Nancy McHugh has brought in a fresh kind of forward thinking about what we're to do there, and I've really learned a lot from Nancy in terms of like issues of health equity, and I think that's important. Laura Resch and Mary Reed and Sarah Seligman and Mary Lynn Naughton, all are people in the Dayton community that have really made a difference in my life. And the first two are from Catholic Social Services. Sarah's from the diocese, does the social action work, and Mary Lynn is at the Matteo Family Foundation and has been a colleague for those 20 years. Can you imagine a person who ran our bookstore is now the leader of a major foundation? So, hey, I also want to thank the faculty in St. Joe's Hall, certainly with Kelly Johnson being close now to on the 4th floor. That's been exciting. Grant Neely, who is working with me to teach the Leadership and Building Community course. I think that's been really exciting. So one person who's been with me for all those years and helped me with our understanding the church community is Sister Angela Ann Zukowski. She's really given me a good sense of what's going on in the church. In addition, I really think that I have to celebrate Judy Keys. Judy's up there. And for 20 years, she kept me moving in this right direction, right? When she's not there, you ought to see what a mess my calendar is, okay? And, and she also kept me out of trouble with the finance office. That was, somehow she knew how to talk, and nobody ever really got me in big trouble. So I want to also, as I said, thank my Stone Mill Marianist community. They've been really very helpful to me and very supportive, and they actually ask me good questions about what's going on in the community. And again, my parents, I want to, who I am today is very much my mom, Mary Lou, and my dad, Ray. My mom, you knew you were loved. There was no question about it. And my dad was always saying, you can do more. There was a little bit of a tension there, but somehow we all made it through in a certain way. So, but that was a loving family. And as I said, my brother Tom, Dave, and Jim are here. My sister Mary Ann is visiting her son up in Chicago, and my brother Mike is out in California. And I've just enjoyed the extended family that we've had. So I want to say thanks to all those people that have really made a difference. So let me talk a little bit about what I mean by regional solidarity. Sometimes people ask me, what is it that I do? What's I'm about? And I say, I strive to be an educator, catalyst, and partner for urban and regional solidarity. And of course they look at me and say, what's that? So I tell them a little bit of story. I think one of the things that's been a challenge for me, which I've enjoyed, is how do we bring our Catholic social tradition into the public discourse, into the conversations of our community. And I think I found some good ways to do that. One of the persons that was very influential when we were young students here at the University of Dayton, can you believe that, 50-some years ago, Father William Ferree wrote a dissertation on social justice, the act of social justice. What is it that you do when you're doing the virtue of social justice? You're changing institutions so there's a greater realization of the common good. And he was very strong on leadership and on management as ways of changing. Now, he was a character. I mean, I could tell lots of stories, but I won't, except maybe later I have a little one that I can tell on. But he really put into me a deep, and I think many of us that were in college at that time and part of the part of school here, he made a difference. He implanted that love of Catholic social tradition in us. Another person that's been a mentor to me is Pope Francis. He's really been somebody that's been so influential. I just love and listen to the things that he has to say. And I was just going to pull out two things that I think are pretty important from things he said. And his latest encyclical, Fratelli tutte, the way I tell students to look at it, it's brothers and sisters together. You know, he raised a really strong question, and it's one I want to raise a little bit later in this conversation. Have we, as middle class and upper middle class, forgotten the poor? Have we really just put them out of our mind, and have we been indifferent? And I think that's a good question for all of us. I'm going to talk about the hidden violence of poverty, and I'm going to say that I think there's a real truth in what Pope Francis is raising. But he gives a great notion for this word of solidarity. And I just want to quote this for you. Solidarity means much more than engaging in sporadic acts of generosity. It means thinking and acting in terms of community. It means that the lives of all are prior to the appropriation of goods by a few. It also means combating the structural causes of poverty, inequality, the lack of work and land and housing, the denial of social and labor rights. So he's really talking about social change, and I think that's, to me, has been so important in what he said. But the thing that he's added to me that it really makes a difference is the concept of friendship, relationships. That change comes about by the friendships that we have, the relationships. And to me, again, a friend is not somebody that just constantly agrees with you, but somebody that challenges you to think more clearly, to work, but together you can respect one another and work through really tough, really difficult, I think, issues. One of the things that I really believe is important is that we listen to the stories of people. Listen to the stories of people in poverty. One of the things that we do in the class that I teach is the students got to sit down with neighbors and talk and listen to stories. And they are changed. I don't think there's any doubt about it. So one of the things that, as Kelly mentioned, the common good is a very important notion. And one of the interesting things as she's talked about is the total sum conditions which allow people, either as groups or as individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. Now, of course, we've talked about human dignity since the time of Aristotle, right? I mean, it's, but I think one of the great things in our community is we've been talking about this issue of well-being as one way of talking about that human fulfillment. And the kind of concept that I wrote in a paper that I think is beginning to bring consensus together is that well-being for individuals and groups includes the meeting of physical, mental, and social health, basic needs like food, housing, education, employment, income. Well-being also includes the meeting of social and emotional needs like a sense of purpose, safety, belonging, and a rich social connection to opportunities. They have the opportunity to create meaningful futures, and I always add something about the openness to the transcendent dimension of life. When we talk about social conditions, we're talking about our community, we're talking about the government, we're talking about such things as our school systems, or we're talking about our economies and the market and how those shape our lives. And yes, there's a kind of relationship between those social conditions. Who created those social conditions? We did as human beings. But we find that they're very hard to change over time. And so I think one of the most important things is how do we teach our students to have that sense of how they can provide social change so that they can provide greater opportunity. So if I had to rewrite the common academic program that we have, which we, as Eric said, we did a lot of work on, I think I would add some things that are very important. Skills of dialogue and knowledge of how to do system change. I think those to me have become very, very important. So I come up with this definition of advancing regional solidarity is a firm and preserving commitment to organize networks of learning and action, committed to transforming the regional system so that there's greater realization of well-being for all individuals and groups in our region, especially those who suffer the most from injustice. I actually thought about a t-shirt, kids wear t-shirts, and I could have a t-shirt version of this. I'm not sure I'd sell too many of them, but, So here's the t-shirt version. Advancing regional solidarity is organizing to transform regional systems so that there's well-being for all. I'm sure I won't sell too many, but my point is, it's a good definition to really make things happen. Okay, so we got this concept of the divided city. And if you look at your booklet that you received when you came in, there's a whole number of things that we share with students on the divided city. It's just, I can't tell you, we spend maybe 3 class periods, and these class periods are long, they're Wednesday nights. But, you look at how things have changed over time, and I won't take you through that, but again, what we really see is the students from 1970 to the present time, our city has become divided. We have become more segregated racially, we've become more segregated economically, and it's amazing to see those differences. And again, you can take a map at snapshots and see those changes over time. Now, I tell people, maps don't convert your heart, We got to get into more deep things about this, but one of the things that I begin to say to students is, look at the different neighborhoods that have evolved over time. And I ask them to take a look at what I would call the affluent neighborhoods, where there's only, let's say, less than 5% poverty, and then maybe disadvantaged neighborhoods in which there's greater than 40%. And what they see over time is that there's a real difference in these neighborhoods. They discovered this by themselves by looking at the census tract, talking to different people. It's really amazing to me. Just looking at structure of schooling, in affluent community, 90% of students are usually meeting the criteria for kindergarten readiness through all the way to graduation and to going to college. 90%. For disadvantaged neighborhoods, it's in the 20s, sometimes to the 30s, for kindergarten readiness, for 3rd grade reading, for math. And we wonder why people aren't making more progress. There's something wrong with our educational system, but I think there's something even deeper than that issue involved. And that is that we look at, to me, I'm a big fan of looking at early childhood education. So, for example, we know that students entering kindergarten, that at an age of 4, a person from an affluent neighborhood knows 7 more words than a child from a disadvantaged neighborhood. We know that a child coming from an affluent from a disadvantaged neighborhood is 12 to 14 months behind in their learning at the time of kindergarten. And again, such things as a remarkably smaller vocabulary. If we look at parental structure, you can see that difference in family supportive wage. Most people in disadvantage cannot have a wage that's sufficient to supporting families in a very important kind of way, where oftentimes in our advantage, in our affluent neighborhoods, 2 parents have a degree, there's maybe 2 families working, and there's always the expectation in the affluent neighborhoods that the kids are going to college. I always ask in my class, and get a show of hands, how early did you know in grade school that you were going to go to college? And I'm telling you, 90% of the kids raise their hand. So that's just a different, and as you talk to the disadvantaged neighborhoods, that same expectation is implanted at an early time. Community structure, family structure. Affluent neighborhoods, there's a high percentage of married families. There's a real sense of parents being able to have time to work with their children, to do extracurricular activities. And in disadvantaged neighborhoods, it's just the opposite. Oftentimes the family is really struggling to put food on the table, to have housing in an important way. So if you look at community structure, one of the things we see in the affluent neighborhoods is there's low crime rates, easily accessible, nutritious food, recreational opportunities, quality recreation, and affordable housing and health. But just the opposite for the disadvantaged neighborhoods. Very hard for persons to afford good housing. So when we go through those four kinds of descriptions, of neighborhoods, I asked the students, what's it like to be in those different neighborhoods? Now, most of them have been in a affluent or middle-class neighborhood, and so they can really identify with what's going on there, how they were really given opportunity. But when they think about the disadvantages of a disadvantaged neighborhood, the problems that people have, they really begin to see this opportunity gap. They read a book by Robert Putnam called Our Kids, and it's very, very clear, very graphical about the opportunity gap between neighborhoods. Okay, so we got segregation, race, poverty, economic segregation. We got these neighborhoods. So why am I so upset about it? Well, I'm upset about it because I call it the hidden violence of poverty. If we think about violence, so for example, when we're watching the television and we're seeing what's happening in Ukraine, we say something's got to be done about that. It immediately touches us then. Or in this Dayton community, when we had the Oregon shooting incident, right away we said we got to organize to make something happen. Or if we had a tornado that we did, we have to organize. We see that violence and we say we have to respond. But I'm telling you, the toxic stress of poverty is hidden. We don't see it. People stuff our young people for hunger, unstable housing, economic problems, lack of medical care, violence and safety concerns. I can't tell you, the young people that I've talked in disadvantaged neighborhoods do not have a dentist. And think about that. Think about all those health kinds of things that are important. But they also can face what we call adverse childhood experiences. Abuse, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, household issues like divorce and spousal abuse, addictions. All of those things have an impact on the children. And we know today, because we've done many studies on it, that this toxic stress really impacts the brain of the child. Poverty does violence to children and adolescents. It really alters their ability to think cognitively, to be able to work interpersonally, and to really respond emotionally. And so why do I call it the hidden violence of poverty? Because we don't see it. We don't talk to one another. In this divided community, we don't share experiences, and I think that's important. So, oftentimes I sit at home at night and wonder why I'm very angry or why I'm grieving. And I tell you, one of the things that's really touched my life is this violence that we do to our children because of poverty. It touches my emotional life, it touches my prayer life, it touches and really motivates why I do this work. Okay, enough of the negative things, which are very real, and I don't want you to knock them off, is what are we doing to change? And I have been working along with a number of people in the community to apply this two-generation approach. And the one thing I want to say is, under Tom Lasley's leadership and all the people working there, we've actually expanded the notion of the two-generation. Let me tell you. The first thing is that two-generation approach tries to bring parents and children together and really work as a team to really move forward so that students do their academic work, the parents are moving to do better family dynamics, and to be prepared for workforce ideas. So for children, health, education, services, home visiting, early childhood education, and out-of-school programs are really important in the process. For parents, education for parenting, literacy skills, basic educational skills, workforce development, the ability to get a job that pays sufficient to provide opportunity and advancement, and focus on building skills for positive family communication. We often know that if you've been raised in a family of extreme poverty, you're going to carry some of those traditions on into the future. For families, we really think coaching of the family, setting together, setting goals, making plans to achieve those goals, and to really work to evaluate the progress. But this is where I think Tom's group has really added something to that two generation. And it's about neighborhoods. How do we build supportive neighborhoods? How do we develop in a neighborhood the capacity to really shape the future of the neighborhood, to really look at how there can be affordable and safe housing, employment opportunities, safe neighborhoods, access to healthy food, physical and mental health services, all those things that make a good neighborhood. How do we challenge the families, the children, to really work to develop their capacity for change in their neighborhood? One of the things that we've done with this Learn to Earn Dayton operation is we have two major initiatives which are connected with one another. The first one is a Northwest Dayton partnership. And again, this is where Tom Lasley and Mike Parks have really done an outstanding work to bring together a major grant, I mean a really strong grant, for 14 months of planning to really try to make a difference in Northwest Dayton around this two-generation approach. We really try to make a difference by, and you would think about the first three things, taking a two-generation approach to building well-being by intentionally and simultaneously working with both children and the adults in their lives. Building high-quality education, childhood education for children birth to 5, and creating quality K-12 schools that close the opportunity gap. But listen to these next three things that are part of that Northwest Dayton partnership. Shifting the power to deeply connect primarily Black-led community organizations, supporting and community-based institutions, racial and economic equality work, and the sixth one is articulating and advocating for policy priorities developed by the families, the youth and the families of that community. I think that empowerment piece is a real major change in the work that we've been doing here in the Dayton area. I kind of nurture the second piece of that, which is called building a network of neighborhood two-generation collaboratives. We have a committee that's working to set up neighborhood collaboratives around this two-generation approach. And we have a number of people here that have been really involved. So Jan Lepore-Jenelson is from East End Community Services, is working in the East Dayton neighborhood with the Ruskin and Wright Brothers School, providing workforce development, providing after-school programs and summer programs, just a wide variety, and are beginning to experiment with some family coaching. You've got to have money to do that. We're trying to find the money, but those experiments are doing really great. And of course, Vanessa, there she is, my great friend in West Dayton. I didn't know what happened to me when I got on the Omega CDC board, and we really were able to work quite hard to make this two-generation approach a real reality. And if you go to West Dayton there, you're going to see the Center for Hope. I had an opportunity to really visit it a couple days ago, and it's really got everything. I mean, you got an early childhood program that's just top-notch. You have Sinclair Community College has rooms there. You have health care of Children's Hospital, and Kettering Hospital has opportunities, all in one building, right? So when a person comes in with multiple needs, they're able to be really worked with. And guess what? They only have to be asked the questions about the services once. And you don't know how bad it's been for people trying to access services and how many times they have to repeat the same information. But Vanessa, with the help of the Northwest Dayton Partnership, has had funding now to develop a coaching system and an information system that allows people to really work through that. But we also have the Children's Hospital that's working in Old North Dayton. Again, UD grad, leading the health equity and work there at the Children's Hospital. They're working with the Kaiser Neighborhood School Center. And then we also have a group that's working on a connection between Head Start programs and early Early Education Learning Center for Dayton Public Schools. Now you say, well, what's the big deal there? Well, the big deal is Head Start has one federal agency, public schools are by another federal agency, and guess what? The connection is terrible. What you develop trust at Head Start, and all that work you've done when it gets to the Dayton Public Schools, because they have a little different criteria, is just dropped. And that, to me, is the reason how we have to change the system. So I believe we've been making real progress on developing these neighborhood collaboratives to implement the two-generation approach. Again, we're putting together a network of people working to advance racial solidarity, really helping people to have the capacity to take hold of their lives. So let me finish up with some challenges. I got 3. At one point I had 10, so you don't say that. So my first recommendation is to Montgomery County. I think we really need, as a county, to recognize that we are a divided city, that we really need to take a look at this hidden violence of poverty and say we're going to do something about it. There's a number of counties and states that have really taken hold of this two-generation. Austin and Travis County in Texas have united their United Way and their county together around that two-generation approach. The state of Colorado has really done the whole thing of bringing their whole child and family policies around the two-generation approach. But we have some real gaps, and I'm only going to give one example. We have just finished the first drafts of an economic development plan. It is beautiful, really laid out nicely, a lot of good stuff, and I really have confidence that people are going to make it happen. But there's a gap. They talk about K-12 education, but they don't say something about 0 to 5 education. We have another group in town called Preschool Promise, and they have really developed a plan for the care of 0 to 5. Prenatal, all the kinds of things, home visiting programs, and so on. But here's the problem. If we want to have a diverse and competent workforce, we have to bring those two things together. If you're not bringing your children out of poverty, you're not going to develop the workforce that you need for the future. So we have a lot to do. Okay, my second challenge to the group is to our university community and to the Catholic Church is how are we going to learn to be better partners to create new models of leadership where we can really bring the clergy and the laity together to be catalysts and partners in building the church, renewing the church, conversion to solidarity, and to really bring in solidarity as an important part of the life of the church. One of the things that's really been eye-opening to me is to participate in 2 conversations we're having going on with the church. One is called the Beacons of Light, how we're going to reorganize our parishes so we can deal with the downturn in number of priests that are available, and synodality. Pope Francis has really said we've got to learn how to talk around the table and really make a change in the church. What I think we can do at University of Dayton, working with the church, is to develop some new models of leadership. How can clergy and laity be partners in the renewal of the church? How can we get people to really challenge ourselves to really undertake solidarity, both in spiritual conversion and moving forward? We have a lot of resources at the university. We have our religious studies department with outstanding people that can think through this. The Institute for Pastoral Initiatives has some wonderful programs of challenging our lay leadership. And we have a great center for leadership on campus. And there are many others, but we haven't brought them together around creating a new model of leadership for the church. So Paul's going to respond to this in a moment, but he knew it was coming, so he... The other thing, my third challenge, is around how can we, the university, be a catalyst and partner for advancing regional solidarity. Over 2 decades ago, we had this president that was really trying to make connections to the community. And we did a lot of initiatives. There was no master plan. There was just lots of linkages, letting things emerge. That was kind of the theme. But now it's 20 years later, and it's time to look back at those initiatives and ask ourselves, how can we build on them? We have matured many of our centers. We've really brought in excellent faculty. We've recruited faculty with expertise in Catholic social thought. So the question I'm asking is, how do we bring those together so that we can have a major impact on our region? How can we build a cross-collaboration among the centers? A couple examples. We have a West Dayton Entrepreneurial Center. We have, in the School of Engineering, a group working on energy. How can those two work together? Or how can our neighborhood community building efforts work together? We have an initiative around health equity, just getting started. The Center of Leadership and Community School of Education could really be, with its health sciences, could really be an important part of that. And I think the Human Rights Center can make a real difference. But how can we pull that all together so it has more impact? I mean, it's really easy for me to say, and ask Paul and Eric to work on those issues, but I do think we're at a really important time in the history of the university where we can make those connections. Now, this is a new idea I had. It's not in the paper, but when I was thinking about this, wouldn't it be great to have our students build a regional solidarity website where they would bring together the knowledge that the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission has on all these different issues, where people like our business school, our group has lots of things that there would be an easily available website where our students could find all this information that would really, some of which is in the booklet, but that we could really integrate those into our classes. So again, the challenge there, and I warned Paul ahead of time that was going to be here, but I really think that these three challenges, if we could take them up, would really move us to an important partner in terms of regional solidarity in our community. So, just to conclude, thank you for your patience. Thank you for this opportunity to tell the story of our community. I keep saying that, yes, this is a celebration. You're going to use Ray Fitz as the player in this thing. But he's only one person among a great many in this community. Yes, I have the role of being that community nag. I think, one of the important things, though, is we have a lot of players in this community that work together very, very thoughtfully. So thank you for being present here tonight. It's a delightful gift. Thank you.
Ray really threw in an additional challenge there that I wasn't aware of in advance. Brother Ray, on behalf of the university, I affirm the values and vision that you have set before us. And in the coming months, we will discern how best to engage the challenges you have posed regarding new models of community leadership for the church and the university's role in working toward an integrated regional strategy for advancing the common good. I'm grateful to everyone present this evening for Brother Ray's address and the celebration of his honorary degree. And I extend thanks to those of you who will participate in the conference throughout this weekend. I want to express particular appreciation to Dr. Kelly Johnson, the Free Endowed Chair in Social Justice, and her many colleagues who have invested so much care in the planning of this conference over many, many months. In order to assist Kelly, I'd like to give a few housekeeping notes. As she indicated in her opening comments, if you have not yet done so, you're invited to continue in this conversation by registering tonight to attend the rest of the conference this weekend. If you are unable to join us for the remainder of the weekend, we ask that you recycle your name tag by placing it in the basket in the reception area. And finally, for those who are registered for the conference, please remember to bring your program books with you tomorrow morning. Following our closing prayer, I invite all of our guests to attend a reception in the atrium immediately outside the courtroom. And now I'd like to invite Father Jim Fitz, the university's Vice President for Mission and Rector, to offer a closing prayer. Father Jim.
Before I say the closing prayer, I just want to say a word for our family that we are very proud of our brother Ray and all that he has done and all that he has shared with us. I was going to say he's embodied many of the gifts of our parents, and he talked about that. But I think one of the things that my dad was a man of integrity, that you were always a person of integrity. And secondly, my mom never knew a stranger. She was compassionate, as you could imagine, and I could tell lots of stories about that, but I won't. But I just wanted to say that, Ray, we're very proud of you this evening. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we believe we are made in your image and likeness. We believe that at our best we are made to love. We have come together this evening and this weekend to reflect on the common good in a divided city and world. The most recent violence in Ukraine has captured our hearts. However, as we heard this evening, there are other forms of violence, especially hidden violence of poverty in our city. Jesus, your Son, taught us to feed the hungry, to give drink to the thirsty, to welcome the stranger, to clothe the naked, to care for the sick, and to visit prisoners. Jesus called us to be in solidarity with the poor and marginalized. Although individual acts of charity are important, as we know and have heard this evening, more is needed. We have to change the structures of our city, our society, and our world, which leave people hungry, thirsty, estranged, naked, sick, and in prison. Help us to contribute to solidarity among all people. Help us to contribute to the common good. Help us to see the sources of hidden violence, to judge the best ways to overcome that violence, and to act together in solidarity to do so. Help us believe, Lord, that we have the power to make a difference. Help us believe that by working together in solidarity, we may overcome the violence that hinders the poorest of your people. As we begin our meeting and reflections at this conference, we implore you, God of our hearts, in our brokenness as a country and world, bring us healing. In our woundedness, bring us empathy. In our divisions, bring us reconciliation. In our actions, bring us transformation. We make this prayer to you, our gracious God, in the name of Jesus and in the power of the Spirit, now and forever. Amen.